Welcome back to Andertons TV. Who is that handsome devil with the pink guitar next to me, I hear you say? It's...
Digital John.
Digital John.
Being less digital today.
Very less digital, yeah. No, not digital at all, in fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, look, so here's an interesting new concept from the lovely people at Celestion, so Britain's most famous speaker manufacturer for sure. If you have a guitar amplifier that you love the sound of, but is perhaps too loud for the environment that you're going to play in, pretty common scenario, right?
All the time, yep.
You historically, unless you wanted to sort of throw that amplifier out and go down a completely different path, you would buy an attenuator to place between the amplifier and the speaker cabinet, and then the amplifier would create all of its power and juicy goodness, and then the attenuator would absorb that, and you could reduce the amount of volume, or the power, sorry, that ultimately goes to the speaker, and then therefore the speaker becomes quieter, but whilst hopefully the amp retaining
full fat sound, yeah.
All that, yes. Now, Celestion have approached this problem from a slightly different angle by making a speaker called the Peacekeeper, which is a very inefficient speaker. So it has a very low sensitivity rating, meaning that with the same amount of power coming from the amplifier into a conventional speaker, going into this speaker should be something like 10 or 11 dB quieter, according to my Google Assistant here. If something is 10 dB quieter, it is something in the region of 10 times as quiet. In fact, what it actually tells me here is the flip side of that. It says if something is 10 dB louder, it is typically about 10 times louder. So I'm assuming the reverse must be true. So we're going to do as scientific a test as we can. We're going to take our decibel meter that normally lives over there and try and put it sort of somewhere so that it's the same distance from each cab. We're also going to room mic to give you some sort of idea of the volume difference between the two. I'm going to put this speaker in this cab, and then the other cab has got a Celestion Creamback medium magnet 65 watt. You know, pretty common guitar speaker. If you want to know all the technical science and jargon behind how have Celestion done it, you'll have to go to their website or read our website. In terms of the speaker itself, it doesn't look any different.
Is it as heavy? It looks heavy.
Let's put the spec on screen now of the weight difference between a medium magnet Creamback and this. It might be a tiny bit. This silvery sort of corrugated sort of bit in between the magnet and the chassis, I don't think is there on a, so maybe that's where the clever bit is. Maybe that's where the sort of the bit that makes it inefficient is. But anyway.
Exciting.
Let's see. These, by the way, are £199. Not the most expensive speaker that Celestion make, but dearer than something like a vintage 30. But I guess relatively speaking, less money than an attenuator is typically.
Yeah, I'd say that.
No way of controlling the amount. It's just a fixed amount less loud.
Yeah.
Are you ready, Mr. John?
Very ready.
Good. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are about to hear this cabinet with a Celestion Creamback 65 watt medium magnet in it versus this cabinet with the new Peacekeeper Quiet speaker from Celestion. We are using a Victory copper for two reasons. Firstly, because John loves anything that's in that sort of hot roddy, voxy,
pushed clean, middly,
all that kind of thing. And secondly, because, as you know, I like any excuse to shoehorn Victory amplifiers into these videos.
And I love this amp. I do love it.
It is. This is Martin Kidd's take on a very British kind of, but more voxy than Marshall kind of vibe. You can see the decibel meter in the front. So when you're hearing the close mic'd stuff, Taylor has set the levels so that actually they're going to sound the same volume. So you'll be able to perhaps compare more the tonal characteristics of the Peacekeeper versus the Creamback. You'll always be able to see the decibel meter to give you an idea of the relative volume difference. And we'll use the room mics at some point in the video to just try to show you how this cab is louder than this cab. Although YouTube land, it's always difficult to perhaps show off volume levels, so the decibel meter might be your friend. Let's start with the Creamback and let's show you kind of like why people like to turn valve amplifiers up a bit to get the sound. Play the sound that you had just before we started rolling, because this sounds great.
And it feels great as well. Oh, that's fun.
Oh,
I love it.
Play a little with the volume just to kind of see how it cleans up. And
love it. Love it.
what decibel rating were we hitting there, Mr. Tay?
100 to 102.
Really?
It's all the low end, I think.
Wow. Okay, so that's pretty loud. Okay, so it's fun in here. It would be completely fine if you were, in a recording studio or playing live or whatever, but too loud for home, I think, and depending on the home you live in. Now, let's all remember which white line the amp was on, and we'll come back to here. But look, this is kind of why, generally speaking, people like to turn valve amplifiers up a bit. So if I just turn it down, which of course is the most obvious way to make it quieter, it just loses something.
Yeah.
So if you... It still sounds fine,
flatter.
but yeah, it's gone a bit fizzier maybe. It hasn't got that indescribable juiciness. But that was certainly quiet enough to play at home with. Right, so we're going to back to where we were, and now we're just going to do the straightforward this cab versus this cab, and I'm doing so by just plugging and unplugging speaker leads on the back. So let's remind ourselves of how wonderful this sounded. It sounds a lot, in fairness, it sounds a lot like just this cabinet when we just turned it down, didn't it? Rather than necessarily like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's massively quieter. I mean, you can see from the decibel rating. What did we hit for the second cab, Tay?
85, 87.
So humongously different, dB rating.
And with dBs, it's like a logarithmic, probably as you see it, like that increases like that. So even though 85 as a number isn't far from 100, it actually is. It's loads different.
Loads.
In the same way as 100 dB is really, it's a noticeable difference between 100 and 101 even.
Yeah. So what I think we can do with this one now is go, well, where's the sweet spot? Can we get more juiciness from the amp but still keep the volume low? Let's try.
And the gain's pretty high. We're already pushing the gain stage quite a lot. That feels good.
I think we're getting closer to the point of this speaker because you're beginning to hear the amp really cooking now. We're perhaps introducing some additional levels of gain maybe from the power section. Still, I'd be surprised if we were even...
91.
It was 91, was it? So that's still quite... I mean, we're borderline maybe just topping out what would be truly home use, but it's not loud, is it?
No, not at all. It's like... I mean, I can hear the tubes rattling in the head as well as the actual speaker cab sound, which you never hear unless you're in a studio with the head and the cab's in a different room. You never really hear that.
We're not using any pedals, by the way. This is all just from the amp. So let's just, here we go. Maximum power output from the head now into the Peacekeeper. Can we hear it on the bridge pickup?
Yep.
And maybe with volume back down? Like
Yeah. Does clean up very well. Feels like very compressed because the pre's driven so much, but in a good way. I quite like it. Ooh. Don't get that when it's quiet.
So what are we fixing here?
Annoying people.
No, what? Sorry.
If it's loud.
I'll reframe that. Okay, so I think we understand that having a normal speaker and just turning the amp down
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily produce the tone from the amplifier that we're trying to achieve. You want that. You're trying to get that driven thing. Marshall Plexi is a great example of an amplifier that completely changes its characteristic as you turn it right up.
Unless on the actual recording, because obviously we can't hear exactly what the mics are hearing, but I'm hearing my strings jangle and the amp go for it organically without hearing the leveled signal. So that'll be an interesting test in post. But I know what you mean.
So I think I get it. I think I would rather have this cab and this turned up a bit louder than this cab and having to use the amp super quiet.
Yeah.
The bit that I think I'm struggling with is is this ever a better solution than an attenuator?
Because you couldn't gig with it. It's not loud enough for a drummer.
Yeah, this speaker cabinet, absolutely. You would need a different speaker cabinet to go and gig with. Whereas, of course, you've got the attenuator. You can just remove the attenuator from the circuit. And there is no sense that you can adjust how much quieter this speaker is. It's just a predetermined amount less.
Somewhere in between the two would be perfect.
I think where it does potentially win over an attenuator, if you've got a combo where there is no obvious way without modifying the amplifier to put the attenuator in between the power amp and the speaker. This is a straightforward, just take the old speaker out, put the new speaker in. I don't know, I mean, it might be expensive mod if you had an AC30, because you've got to replace both speakers. But I guess if you've got a loud combo, then yes, potentially this is a neater solution than an attenuator.
Yeah. I mean,
there is always with attenuators. I feel like people complain with attenuators that the more you attenuate, the more treble you lose from the amplifier.
Yeah, there's in theory no colour with that.
That should be the theory. Let's go back to it. Let's have another listen. It doesn't feel like, I said, with attenuators we've used in the past, if you attenuate up to that level, it sort of sounds a bit like you've thrown a blanket over
I think
the
that's
cab.
what the USP is of this, isn't it?
I think it might be.
All the kind of chewy pick attack still there.
But of course what you don't have is just the joy of the volume. and where you got that chord to feed back at the end of the last bit, like that, that's just, that just only happens if you've got a bit of air moving.
Yeah.
I kind of like it. I mean, again, can we let's do just using the overheads.
Okay.
I guess I need to get a sort of a level that the overheads can kind of cope with when it's loudest. a massive
It's
volume
huge.
difference.
It almost sounds like a different EQ. It's so much.
It almost sounds like it's too much volume. Like it's
Yeah.
almost like Celestion. You need to make us a speaker that's sort of in between.
Yeah, in the middle would be perfect for me.
Although again, I can see this being
Bless
popular.
her.
I really can. Particularly I think people that want to, like those new Marshall Studio series,
Yeah.
which, you know, where you've got old JTMs and old Plexis and stuff, and they really do sound fabulous, kind of cranked a bit, but they're just a bit too loud to use at home. This would be ideal. And then you'd have the amp gunned like the whole time. You'd be going through tubes like crazy, I would imagine,
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
just, you know, permanently using your amplifier.
And this isn't a
maxed
quiet
out.
amp either, right? This
No.
can really
I
push
think
it
it's
out. So
20, 25 or 30 watts, something like
yeah,
that.
so it's not the amp. Yeah, interesting.
It's a good amp. You know what? I mean, I think the copper probably is the least popular in the Victory range, and I just think it's the one that we always forget to go, do you remember how good that sounds? And you
Yeah,
play
yeah.
it and you go, oh, it does sound good. But yes, so you can see on here we had the bass cut on, the mid boost off. You can see what we've done with the EQ, slightly less bass, slightly pushed middle and treble, a little bit of reverb. Gain was about halfway. It's not designed to be quite as clean as an AC30. It's designed to be a pushed,
Yeah.
you know, rock and roll.
Does it
kind
very,
of
very
version.
well.
Hopefully you found that useful. If you think the Celestion Peacekeeper speaker is going to solve issues for you,
Keep the peace.
yeah, links will be in the description below. You can go and buy them. It takes literally 5 minutes to unscrew your old speaker, put the new one in. Bosh, that was good.
Enjoy.
My favourite
Thanks for
thing
watching.
about that guitar was this video. I'll say this again. My favourite thing about this video has absolutely been the pink guitar, as it's a beautiful colour match to your burnt face. See you later.
In a bit.